Thank you very much, Regina and Michelle, for that lovely introduction. And I think the inspiration comes from everybody globally who is busy crafting homes. They might have lost homes, they might be having to shape homes in particular contexts. So, home is something that's both universal and particular, and it has a particular meaning. So I think this is for everybody. So what I really want to talk about is just briefly introduce our session and get us all to think about what home means for us and what kind of functionalities that we need now living in the current time. So what does home mean in the digital age? And I think particularly when the digital technology has become what we would call lively. I remember ICT years ago, and you were kind of interacting with a screen. We now have data-driven services. We have AI, we have machine learning. So our relationship with the technology is one where we become connected in a particular way technologically. We gain intelligence. The technology gains knowledge and data about us. It learns about us, but we can also learn through it. So it's a much more lively relationship with our technologies that is more complex. So, in a sense, we have to ask, what does that mean? What kinds of households are there? What are their needs? And how do they want to actually do home, something Morgan calls doing home? What are the cultures of homemaking? And of course, homes have always changed. Homes change in terms of purpose, role, design, and meaning as society changes. So, talking kind of amid a sort of array of changes, the smart home really emerged in the early 2000s. And the whole vision of that was utilising the Internet of Things to connect appliances. Now, I'll say why that failed a bit later on. And what's happened instead, we've had this kind of ad hoc evolving context of where new technologies have come into the homes. Households have sort of domesticated them, adapted some of them, rejected some of them. So we're seeing this sense of a digital wave of 3G, 4G, 5G, now going on to 6G, more smart devices, more use of platform services, specific work, health and education, smart systems. So it's becoming integrated into all the work that we do in homes. And we're also seeing changes in terms of households. There's been an increase in single-person, intergenerational and multi-occupancy households across a range of ages, genders, sexualities and disabilities. And as our living arrangements have diversified, we have, for example, families of choice, families, friends as families and blended families. Queer intimacies are as common as single parents and same-sex unions. And through this diversification, we see that also it's kind of emerged with the development of new kind of commitments of the home and by households. So more home health care, ageing in place, the drive to sustainable consumption, hybrid working and online learning. So there's this kind of social and technical change going on. So home, it's a very complex sense, and I think our introduction to our speakers have already talked about that, but home is economic, social and cultural. It covers dwelling spaces, interactions and relations amongst household members, artifacts, technologies and our networks, social, cultural as well as technological. And I think in normative and ideological terms, home has positive connotations. It is idealised as somewhere where people feel safe, comfortable and free to be themselves. It evokes emotions ranging from comfort, intimacy and security. But it can also feel oppressive. There can be abuse in the home. So it kind of, it depends on the context. So in ideal terms, home is a base for self-actualisation, autonomy and dignity. It gives feelings of being at home, comfortable and at ease. And of course this is not always the case, but the vision of home remains strong. It is something valued both socially and cultural. It's complex and therefore has many dimensions. So how can we start to think about people, place and technologies? So if we start with taking Husserl's concept of dwelling as a starting point, we can start to think about the home and home lives as relational, combining our internal household relations with relations in terms of our neighbourhoods, at school, with sort of community associations and so on, but also through our digital services. So homes then are more than a technology. They are relational, made in and through the relations of households and their networks. However, increasingly those relations involve lively technologies. Robotics and autonomous systems are very much are extending into our relations of home. Digital platforms and services that run on them are something that we use. And the way in which that relationship between the lively tech and members is changing. So in our pilot study, one person said she heard her daughter say to Alexa, "You are my friend." And social media is very much part of the way in which we connect and sort of relate to people outside. So it also includes relations with sharing platforms, gardening tasks, gift share, food banks, as well as telehealth care. So in overall terms, these lively technologies feature in our home security, work, shopping, healthcare, communication, relationships and companionship. So what we're seeing is a deepening relationship between households and household relations with lively technologies. And this can be seen through, if you like, Amazon Household or Google Family, through the datification of smart health systems and devices. But although they offer benefits, there is concern about platform colonization, very much where the platforms are undermining residents' feeling to be free to be themselves, which is a key aspect of the home. So if we think about domestication, the failure of smart homes. So smart homes had this vision, everything would be connected, a magic solution. But what Richard Harper found is that actually they didn't consider the intelligence and the values of the people who lived in that home and kind of what they wanted. So the smart home, in a sense, failed because it undermined household perceptions of autonomy and control. It failed to recognise the purpose that technology can fulfil in the home and what households needed from the home. It lost the contribution of household members' intelligence in making home and to address how people wanted to live in their home. This technology-centred focus also failed to consider the politics of households in domesticating the technology. Domestication is a process in the way in which people within households appropriate the technology, adapt it, fit it and fix it to their needs, rejecting some, accepting the other. So it's a very much an engagement and a shaping. So the household is both an innovation, a place for innovation and change, but it's done in relation to established rituals of what home might mean. So it puts a brake, tames that technology a little bit. So the household members and the work they do is really important in the way the role of technology is negotiated and how it fits into to what we mean by home. And so here then we have to kind of think of agency and power. When we think of agency at the household level, it's actually not an individual and a technology. It's not a big organisation as a technology. It's kind of a meso level of a set of members coming together to negotiate how they want to use that technology, what might work, what might not work. The most common way it's talked about is in terms of parental control of digital access for younger people. But it's really interesting in the age of sustainability that it's very often to look at green sort of practices within the home. That's very complex. People have different understandings of what sustainability might be. And this is what's coming through in terms of the ways in which technologies are negotiated within the complexity of the home. And of course here, power relations within households count. We all know that gender, age and expertise plays into how the home works. But what's quite interesting, these new technologies are unsettling some of these expectations. Younger people probably know more about the digital technology, but parents might be more aware of digital harms. So it's the ways in which that works through. Older people with special healthcare needs might know more about their health needs than the carer who comes in and might manage the technology. So we're seeing a lot of negotiation. And this creates a series of dilemmas of how to balance, if you like, the convenience of technology with household members' self-actualization and dignity. It raises questions about how household agencies can be used in respect that respect the privacy and informational autonomy of households and their members. And also how to benefit from increased personalization in relation to shared senses of the household. So it's really kind of important to think about the agency within the household vis-a-vis the agency of these lively technologies. And if we think about automation, it involves analysis and convergent decision-making using large amounts of data, but it also aggregated across household populations. And it also uses artificial intelligence, chiefly machine learning and natural language processing techniques. So the agency within these lively technologies has to be balanced in relation to the agency of the household members themselves. So where might this sit? What's this deepening symbiotic relationship between household agency and the agency of automation? And I think here, if we look at what we do in the household, they're people's practices in terms of care, work, education and well-being, as well as managing risk. So telehealth, for example, in many ways telehealth is mainstreaming, remote care is becoming more and more important, but of course that means what are the support systems around that telehealth? And that's not just for the individual person in the home, but the care workers, and knowing they can trust that technology. Is there elements of risk? How can they assess the data? How we might learn from home, and that is also about the physical space. We might have the technological access, but is there a quiet place to study or work? But then there's also getting together. How might we share that coming together and that companionship? And is the virtual enough? How is that linked through? And of course, all of this sits on top of digital inclusion and exclusion. We know digital exclusion sits on top of existing social inequality and social exclusion. So if we then layer digital inequalities and there's a reliance on the technology, are we widening that gap? And are people being left out more and more? There's also issues of harm, data breaches, online bullying, trolling, online abuse. These are all well-known things. How can these be addressed within the home? And then, of course, privacy. Privacy around data, but also privacy in relation to relations between household members, and so on. So how might we frame these lively technologies? How can we develop household-centric research and development, and what kind of regulation and innovation do we need? If we think about household agency, what we all do, and machine agency, how do we regulate those? And how do we support innovations within households? Because remember, households are sites of production as well as consumption. They're excited by the promise of the new, but might also be fearful of the promise of the new. But it comes into play with the rituals of meaning of home. So I think to address the development of homes going forward, it's about addressing the relational and distributed agency of households and lively technologies, their respective agencies, and how they can combine in making homes that are meaningful as both symbolic environments but also functioning spaces. We need to think about how housing and digital inequality impact on homes in relational terms, and we need to understand regulation in these settings and how to work with innovation and knowledge within the household as our relationships with lively technology deepen. Not just to tame the technology, but also where we might not want the technology. So this is very much about addressing agency and structure and the developments in understanding our relationships with technologies, with neighbours, with services and other support networks. I think